All right, here we go. I think we're live. Check, check. What's up, everybody? Seems like we got audio. Video is good. You guys can just give me a little feedback there in the chat. And let me know if you can see and hear me okay. That would be terrific. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful Saturday morning. John the Morgile checking in here for a Fake Space and Flat Earth live stream for you guys. Hope you enjoy it. What's up, Corey Murphy? Orlando, the Meat Taco Junkie. Nicholas Brown, workhorse from Aussie land, down under. Righto. So, got a few different things that I wanted to cover and talk about today. Probably won't be as long as last week, but we shall see. So, we're going to be talking about some fake space news. That's always fun. And we're going to start off talking about this Asteroid Bennu. I guess that's how you say it. So first, while everyone's piling in, okay, yeah, audio and video good. Hear yes, see no. Okay, so let's see here. Starting off with Asteroid Bennu. We're going to watch a little video snippet, hopefully, if it'll stream through. Here we go. The first one I wanted to check out was this one here. Is that a video? Let's see. And we're going to talk about these particle events because something really strange about this, and you'll see why. Always some strange things about asteroids and fake space, because as we know, it's all lies. But they're even sort of breaking their own rules when it comes to this Bennu and the particle, little particle chunks that are exploding off of it. So the title of this headline on SciTech Daily: Asteroid Bennu's mysterious particle events explained by NASA's OSIRIS-REx. And of course, we can't skip past the ancient Egyptian sort of connotations of this Osiris-Rex, so basically King Osiris, right? And let's just have a little reminder, who exactly was Osiris? And I think I spelled it wrong, shouldn't matter, in the ancient Egyptian lore. So Osiris was the god of the dead and the ruler of the underworld. That's a little bit better accolade than the wild animal goddess, right? Osiris was the brother / husband of Isis and the brother of Nephthys and Seth. He was also the father of Horus. As well as being a god of the dead, Osiris was a god of resurrection and fertility. So, of course, NASA, and I guess the Osiris means something. I think the guy that comes up with NASA's acronyms got paid a bonus for this one because it's a pretty interesting little acronym. So, what does NASA's OSIRIS stand for? Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, Security, Regolith Explorer. NASA Asteroid Study and Sample Return Mission. Okay. And so I did want to play there's a video clip somewhere. I don't want to have too many browser windows open. So okay, here we go. Let's just play this video clip first while everyone's still kind of piling in. Because this right here just blows me away. Let's just check this out, and hopefully you won't have too much buffering issues on the stream. But really, there's nothing I can do about that if there is, so sorry in advance if it does. So here we go. No audio here, but we'll read about it. So you can see these little particles are exploding from the asteroid Bennu. And then some of these little pebbles and particles actually orbit around the thing, right? Because of its gravity. Some of them, as you can see, get launched off into fake space, as they claim. but there's actually enough gravity on this thing here to cause little pebbles to orbit it, right? And so, what does that tell us about what we're told about gravity in Lions? Because they say that only planetary-sized objects can generate gravity. That's how they get away with us not measuring or detecting gravity when it comes to relatively smaller objects than planets. And if you remember the Cavendish experiment, Cavendish, way back hundreds of years ago, was able to allegedly measure gravity from, kind of heavy balls in his tool shed. So when it comes to Cavendish, his very small balls relative to planets were able to generate gravity. And of course, this asteroid Bennu is able to generate gravity, but that begs the question, why aren't there little pebbles orbiting, say, the Great Pyramids in Giza, right? And so let's get into it. This article here, and you saw the animation. I'll probably play it again. And let me just make sure. Did that buffer much for you guys when I did that? Looks like you guys can hear what I'm saying. Okay. So shortly after, well, let's read the caption on this image. No, I don't want news and updates from you. Thank you. The caption on this image here says, "The view of Asteroid Bennu ejecting particles from its surface on January 6, 2019, was created by combining two larger images taken by the NavCam-1 imager aboard NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. A short exposure image, which shows the asteroid clearly, and a long exposure image, which shows the particles clearly." So how would a long exposure image allow you to see little particles in very fast motion in space, right? I don't know. I don't get it, because wouldn't that cause those small particles in motion to be like blurry and less visible? I don't know. What do I know? But it says it shows them clearly. Other image processing techniques were also applied, such as cropping and adjusting, and I would say faking everything, and not just the brightness and contrast, not just cropping of each layer. Layers, huh? NASA Goddard, University of Arizona. Now, wasn't University of Arizona, isn't that where Lawrence Krauss? Maybe I'm wrong. We're going to talk about him a little bit later, because he was in the news last year, and I think I might have noticed it and maybe mentioned it, but never really dug into it. And this whole Epstein revelation actually ties into Lawrence Krauss a bit. So the article goes on to read, shortly after NASA's OSIRIS-REx, king god of the underworld, spacecraft arrived at Asteroid Bennu. An unexpected discovery by the mission science team revealed that the asteroid could be active or consistently discharging particles into space. The ongoing examination of Bennu and its sample that will eventually be returned to Earth could potentially shed light on why this intriguing phenomenon is occurring. So I wonder if it's going to be like the moon rocks that were gifted to foreign countries by NASA after the faked Apollo missions, which turned out to actually indeed be petrified wood, and so clearly not coming from the moon. Even NASA doesn't claim that there's trees on the moon, I don't think. And so when this Bennu allegedly comes back from the asteroid Bennu, I wonder what kind of pebbles they're going to put in there to convince people that it is space debris, right? So the article continues, the OSIRIS-REx team first observed a particle ejection event, and I guess you could call that a PEE, a P, in images captured by the spacecraft's navigation cameras taken on January 6, 2019, just a week after the spacecraft entered its first orbit around Bennu. So again, this begs the question, how massive and dense is Bennu? Because if it's allowing pebbles and spacecraft to orbit it, then it is generating, pretty good degree of gravity, wouldn't it? So let's dig in a little bit to the alleged physical characteristics of Bennu. And by the way, Wikipedia is hurting for money. They do not want to sell ads on their site, so they're asking for donations or contributions. So and they won't let you forget about it. So they'll even no matter how many times you close that little notification thing, it'll still keep popping up. So anyway, they say on Wiki here that Bennu is a carbonaceous asteroid in the Apollo group discovered by the Linear Project on September 11th, 1999, just before the Y2K thing, right? Potentially hazardous object that is listed in the Century Risk table with the second highest cumulative rating on the Palermo Technical Impact Hazard Scale. It has a cumulative in 1 in 2,700 chance of impacting Earth between 2175 and 2199. And I guess we'll never live to see that if it does occur, right? As if such a thing is possible. So they say this is another, okay, here we go, yet another Egyptian sort of connotation here. It's named after Bennu, the ancient Egyptian mythological bird associated with the sun, creation, and rebirth. So what is it with NASA and these Egyptian and ancient Greek and Roman pagan gods? I mean, they really do have a thing about that. A bit esoteric and mystery school-esque, if you will. But so they go on to say that it has a diameter of about approximately 492 meters, so half a kilometer. Pretty big, right? And it's been observed extensively with the Arecibo Observatory Planetary Radar and the Goldstone Deep Space Network. Yeah, sure. So isn't it kind of funny that Bennu is the target of OSIRIS-REx, right? So there's just Egyptian stuff oozing from this. I mean, I don't understand how people can not realize that there is something a bit fishy about NASA's fascination or obsession with ancient pagan gods. But so it's a half a kilometer in diameter. I think they talk about the density as well. It's about a gram per cubic centimeter, if I remember correctly. We'll confirm that. If I can find it. Orbit, origin, resonance, surface features, activity. We'll just have to keep scrolling. Maybe it's over here on the right. Yeah. Physical characteristics. So, and I just love how they give you the dimensions. I wonder which one of these is the girth, right? 282.37 by 268.05 by 250.25 meters, plus or minus 0.06 meters. So it's pretty big, but is that really big enough to generate gravity? I mean, can you think of something comparable here on the ground in reality that is about that size? Maybe a mountain. I mean, why aren't there little pebbles orbiting mountains, right? Okay, so all right, I get it. Earth is the major gravity generator in the situation, so things just fall to it. But like, if you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you drop something off of that cliff straight down, wouldn't you kind of expect the gravity of that cliff to attract the rock or the pebble that you're throwing off of it, if something the size of Asteroid Bennu is large enough to generate its own gravity field, as they claim? So, large objects only generate gravity if they're in space, right? The one single place in reality or hypothetical reality that we can't go to verify, can't go to falsify, landing it right in the category of pseudoscience, right? Because if it's not observable to the average person or to the run-of-the-mill scientist, which is anybody that observes things and practices the scientific method, if we can't go up there to observe it, verify it, or falsify it, then it is literally the definition of pseudoscience. But if you've got these really high-tech and highly expensive NASA instruments, then you do have the ability to verify this, but you're going to have to trust NASA. So what is the mean density? Yeah, it's about 1 gram per cubic centimeter, right? So just to get an idea, what is the density of an ice cube, right? So we can get something that we're familiar with. And the density of ice is just a little bit less than this thing, about a little bit less than 1 gram per cubic centimeter, and Bennu is allegedly a little bit more than 1 gram per cubic centimeter. So, roughly equivalent to ice. So, we're expected to believe that a half a kilometer diameter object in space, the density of an ice cube, more or less, basically generates its own gravity field that allows for everything from pebbles to Limobiles to orbit around it. Okay, I just find this absurd because again, if something that size was able to generate a gravity field, then you would expect a similar measurable gravity field around large objects such as mountains or maybe large skyscrapers, whatever. You would expect something similar, something measurable, because like you can measure magnetic attraction, that's measurable. Okay, even on very small scales or large scales, it doesn't matter. The natural forces in reality are certainly scalable, you know. But when it comes to gravity, you either have to be, Cavendish hundreds of years ago to measure it, or you have to be in space where nobody can go to verify or falsify it. So just very, very strange to me that they would even claim that this thing has little particles orbiting around it. Okay, so let's watch this little animation again because this is what they're claiming is going on here. Where'd it go? Shit. Okay, yeah, here it is. Let's roll this again. So that's a pretty strong gravity field, right? So some of these particles are orbiting and then falling back to it. Some of the particles actually go around it, orbit around it a bit before they fall back down, and then other particles are just ejected off into the infinite vacuum of space. Which, by the way, that's the sort of thing that you would expect to happen if you had, like, let's say, a balloon full of colored gas in space. If that balloon were to pop, you certainly wouldn't expect the gas to sort of conglomerate into a cloud. It would just expand in all directions to fill the infinite void of space. However, in contrary to that, we do have things like nebula allegedly in space that are exactly that, conglomerations of diffuse gases, clouds in a vacuum, which is a physical impossibility. Okay? But so this is what they're claiming. And, just again, looking at the size, the density of this thing, it begs the question, why don't we have any, scalable, measurable gravity here on the ground in reality when it comes to relatively large, high-density objects, which you will never find a shred of evidence for. And, of course, the globe earthers or the globetards will say, not so much anymore, but you'll still find it, that the observable fact that what goes up must come down proves that the Earth is a spinning ball. Yep, that's what they believe, that the observation or the natural law that things will fall to the ground or high density objects will fall to the ground proves that you live stuck to the side of a spinning ball. Okay, so I just will mention that if you've ever tried to walk around on the sides of a spinning ball, which is physically impossible, but let's just say you could, maybe you're strapped into it, right? Fastened securely to the side of the spinning ball. The very last thing you would ever expect would be to say, you're stuck to the side of the spinning ball, you have a rock in your hand, and you just sort of throw that rock out and away from the axis, right? The last thing you would ever expect is that thing, that rock that you threw, to fall back down towards you or towards the surface of the ball. It would, it would clearly fly off out and away from the radius, 90 degrees to the radius, the point that you let it go. And so something that is a physical impossibility, if the Earth were a spinning ball, again, what goes up must come down, is somehow transmuted into proof that the world is a spinning ball. So, I will just mention that what goes up must come down makes perfect sense on the flat and stationary Earth, really truly does. However, people have been so brainwashed since they were just little kids to believe this ridiculous fairy tale that somehow an impossibility is now classified as proof of their theory, right? I can't even think of an analogy that encapsulates the absurdity of this, right? I mean, how many times have you heard it? Oh, well, if the Earth is flat, then why do we have gravity? everybody knows that gravity is the magical force that allows, for one example, all of the oceans of the world to be stuck to the side of a spinning sphere, and yet butterflies and hummingbirds can, flap around. Basically, hummingbirds and butterflies and such are anti-gravity devices. Helium balloons are also anti-gravity devices, right? But when you realize that it's all dictated by density and buoyancy, higher density objects, for whatever reason, find their way down towards the ground. Relatively lower density objects or gases find their way above that. Okay, so it is the natural order to things. Really, all you need for this fact to work on flat Earth is a minor tendency for higher density objects to make their way downward and relatively lower density objects to not. Right? And that's all you need is a very minor tendency, and I'm still pretty convinced that it is the electrostatic charge of the Earth. Okay? And basically, the Earth is a giant capacitor plate certainly has a magnetic field. And, again, a static electric charge would greatly, it fits, right? It fits the explanation of this minor tendency for higher density objects to find their way down. But sort of got off in the weeds there again. I just find it very hard to believe that, NASA is even claiming that this asteroid Bennu, half a kilometer in diameter basically, the density of an ice cube, is generating its own gravity field strong enough to allow for pebbles and limemobiles to orbit around it. So basically, without reading too much of this, their theories range from other meteors striking Bennu to cause these ejecti, and then they also believe that there's possibly like water in there, and then it either freezes or heats up, which causes like perturbances within the meat of the asteroid, and basically causes expansion and contraction, which loosens up the little particles, which are then violently ejected from it. And then the gravity of this object is strong enough to cause those little pebbles to reverse their direction in space on a bell curve, basically, and find their way back, stuck to the side of this asteroid in space. So, again, I don't understand why, if you're standing on the top of one of the pyramids in Giza, maybe that's not quite as large as Bennu, maybe you have to be a little larger, but shouldn't there be some measurable gravitational field coming off of large, high-density objects like pyramids? If they're claiming that that's what's going on with Bennu. So just caught in a big bold-faced lie as far as I'm concerned. And they're breaking their own rules as to what gravity is and how it works. Gravity is such a weak force that you have to have a planetary or a moon-sized object to generate it. And yet, something very, very small in comparison, asteroid Bennu, millions of times smaller, it can generate its own gravity because NASA said so. Right, so I would just love to see any experimental proof ever that corresponds with this sort of a claim by NASA. Right? I mean, this is a big problem, I think, and it's just crazy that people don't even, the scientists, supposedly the skeptical, critically thinking scientists of the world, don't even bother to ask these sorts of questions. Like, wow, man. Wow. So we will read this. The team investigated a wide variety of possible mechanisms that may have caused the ejection events and narrowed the list to 3 candidates. Meteoroid impact. So let's think about that for a minute. Meteoroid impact. So you're telling me that basically a bullet in space, and how fast do they say this is going, and relative to what? That would be my question. So, they say that the speed, let's see, I know it's in here. I think it's like 200 miles a second or something. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Orbit characteristics. Orbital speed. 28 kilometers a second, or 63,000 miles an hour. And again, I would say relative to what? Because, let's face it, it would have to be relative to the Earth, which they say is going about 10 times faster than that. But remember, they claim that the galaxy is in motion at millions of miles an hour. Then the sun is in motion around the galaxy at hundreds of thousands, I think almost 500,000 miles an hour. Then the Earth is in motion around that at 66,600 miles an hour. So how do they claim this? Because let's put it this way: if you were to somehow go into fake space, hypothetically, and then stand completely still relative to the non-existing vector of space itself, then essentially what would happen is the sun, the Earth, the galaxy would fly away from your position at millions of miles an hour. So certainly I don't think that they're claiming this thing's speed is 63,000 miles an hour relative to, free space standing still, because then it would technically be going millions of miles an hour relative to the Earth. So I guess they're saying that the average orbital speed is that 63,000 miles an hour relative to the Earth, which to me is just crazy. But so the point that I was making is, so this thing's going 63,000 miles an hour, just a little tiny bullet through the hypothetical space, and yet somehow there's other little tiny asteroids or meteoroids that are striking it and causing these ejecta. That's one of their theories, which to me that would be like, you know, shoot a bullet and then from a 90-degree angle or whatever angle, try to shoot that bullet as it's in flight. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that you would have all of these little mini strikes on the asteroid from other littler meteoroids or whatever. So where did we go? Yeah, meteoroid impacts, thermal stress fracturing, which I already just mentioned, and then release of water vapor. Wow, SciTech Daily needs a grammar lesson, which should be release of water vapor. I need to get my head out of the editorial mode, though, really. And then they go on to say that these meteoroid impacts are common in the deep space neighborhood of Bennu. And it's possible that these small fragments of space rock could be hitting Bennu where OSIRIS-REx is not observing it, shaking loose particles with the momentum of their impact. So this just screams of nonsense to me, that you would have this 63,000 mile an hour object relative to what I don't know, being a target for littler meteoroids that are flying through space. I mean, let's remember, going way back to the 1970s, Pioneer 10, they claim that it went to Jupiter, NASA does, and traveled through the asteroid belt, about 90 million miles through the asteroid belt, never even got a scratch on it, not even a scratch, and yet this asteroid just gets hit all the time in space. So, it's just the bullshit meter is pretty high on this one as the normal. But according to Lyons, these meteoroid impacts in deep space are pretty common, right? Oh my goodness. Water release, stress fracturing, but they also say it could be combinations of these things. And I think how they got the name of Bennu was pretty interesting. They did a competition to name that asteroid between like elementary to high schools, and they picked I think it was an elementary school student from North or South Carolina that somehow came up with this Bennu. Oh, and who was Bennu again? Let's get into that. It's like some kind of a winged Egyptian god. Who was Egypt Bennu? Bennu was an ancient Egyptian symbol and icon, so not a god. Mythological phoenix of Egypt, right? According to Egyptian mythology, the Bennu was a phoenix-like bird that sheltered in the Persi tree, the tree of life at Heliopolis. Name: Bennu is the Egyptian word for phoenix. Okay. So, yeah, OSIRIS-REx is on the hunt for Bennu. Wow. Could we get any more esoteric than that, NASA? But yeah, that they picked the name from an alleged contest from students all over the country, and they went with that. So just an interesting little tidbit there. Now here's the here's the images that we get in the original resolution of this asteroid. Maybe we can make it bigger. I don't want to bog the screen down. Hopefully y'all can see that. But it's just a very generic, low-resolution image. And they say Bennu is roughly a spheroid, resembling a spinning top. And its axis of rotation is 178 degrees to its orbit. So, yeah, spinning objects in space can have things stuck to the sides of it because of their gravity. But if you try to find evidence for this gravity here in physical reality, you will find none. And what goes up must come down is not proof of gravity. So, like Neil deGrasse Tyson dropping his mic on the floor isn't a proof of gravity. It's a demonstration of the natural law: what goes up must come down, assuming that it is a relatively high density object. So, pseudoscience just oozing with ignorance, just like everything else when it comes to the ball Earth. So, there was another sort of commentary on that same video that we just looked at. I wanted to play if I can possibly find it. Maybe it's this one. Claiming copyright.
In late 2018, as NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft neared its target, Bennu, the asteroid grew in detail from a few tiny pixels to an incredibly high-resolution image. OSIRIS-REx confirmed the asteroid's basic shape, which was originally observed in 1999 by ground-based radar at Arecibo Observatory. What scientists didn't expect was just how rough and boulder-filled the asteroid would turn out to be. While it can be difficult to fully grasp Bennu's unfamiliar surface, it's helpful to understand the scale of what you're seeing here. In this image, the brightest boulder is the length of a horse. And
Really? So why doesn't the Eiffel Tower, or, the pyramids at Giza have a little bit of measurable gravity, right? I mean, if you, again, bringing this back to a magnetic sort of comparison, you can measure magnetic force or magnetic fields in reality, and there's no question about it. Now, do we really understand what's going on with magnetism? I don't think so. I mean, sure, we've got theories, but I don't think that we really understand it. However, it is measurable. Okay, so there's really no mystery there. But yeah, when it comes to gravity, you have to be in space, I reckon.
Surface in order to enter into orbit. With its orbital A phase, OSIRIS-REx successfully entered the closest ever orbit for a spacecraft, setting a Guinness World Record in the process. Then, 6 months later...
A Guinness record? Now, hold on. I thought that somebody from Guinness had to verify what's going on in order for it to get in the book. So we're telling me that we launched a Guinness inspector up to the asteroid Bennu in order to verify that it's actually orbiting up there, or Guinness just sort of takes NASA's word for it when it comes to unverifiable, unfalsifiable claims. I mean, come on, Guinness. Anybody else that tries to, get themselves into the Guinness book is going to go through a pretty stringent verification process, okay? But no, not NASA.
Meters of the rocky surface. Because OSIRIS-REx flew so closely over the surface during orbital B, the team was able to map the topography and shape of Bennu better than we have our own moon. In addition,
oh, really? So one little generic Limobile orbiting around this gravity-rich giant ice cube is able to map the surface better than we have mapped the surface of the moon. Okay. Well, you know what? I would say if it is possible that this is being faked, which I would say that it is, CGI is certainly a thing, then that's exactly what they're doing. Okay, clearly.
In addition to mapping asteroid Bennu, OSIRIS-REx plans to collect and return a sample back to Earth. To do that, the spacecraft will carefully tag the surface of Bennu. The OSIRIS-REx team has selected 4 possible sample sites for the mission: Osprey, Kingfisher, Nightingale, and Sandpiper. The spacecraft has been
I would say Crackpiper.
Closely imaging these sites from different angles to select the best touchdown spot for OSIRIS-REx. What was originally envisioned as a smooth and easy touchdown on Bennu's surface has become a complex endeavor to tag a small, crowded space on the asteroid, an area no larger than a few parking spots, by mid-2020. The OSIRIS-REx team has already pushed the boundaries of scientific exploration, going from ground-based radar images all the way to being a few hundred meters from the asteroid's surface, and is now mere months away from a sample collection attempt.
Yep, that's what they're claiming. Here pretty soon they're claiming that they're going to touch down on it, bounce off of it, grab a sample, and then get back to Earth. Right? Wow. I mean, just crazy how they're making these claims that the thing has its own gravity fields, couldn't be magnetic, no, even if it was up there, which I highly doubt. In the ground-based radar, I don't know, man. Are there objects flying around up in the sky? I don't know, man. Maybe not. Is the sun or the moon, are they physical objects, or are they just lights in the sky? I really don't think we know. And that brings us to the next little thing here. This was just in NASA news within the last couple of days. It has to do with the, another one of these Limobiles getting very, very close to the sun. So I think just NASA news will find it pretty easily. Yeah, mystery at the center of the solar system. Let's see. I found it yesterday. Let's see if I can find it again. Yeah, the Atlantic 2 days ago, mystery at the center of the solar. Maybe this is it. Okay, so this is their new claim that the mystery at the center of the solar system. They say a spacecraft has finally gotten close enough to the sun to gather clues about some lingering questions. Oh, wait, okay, I'm scrolling too far here. Right. So they say, for a little, this is the caption for the image here, or the GIF, whatever. For a little NASA spacecraft, the weather outside is frightful. The Parker Solar Probe is on a mission towards the sun. The spacecraft has been exposed to scorching temperatures and intense sunlight as it draws closer with every loop around. Eventually, Parker will glide through the star's outer atmosphere and feel the toastiness of nearly 2 million degrees Fahrenheit, more than 1 million degrees Celsius. Okay, okay. Parker is dressed appropriately for the journey. It wears a thick, custom-made shield. And what are they using, like Superman's rib cage or something? To protect its scientific instruments and systems and tubes with flowing water to cool itself down. Really. So you've got flowing water in the vacuum of space, in the icy, frigid, cold vacuum of space, or the super hot atmosphere of the sun. They say inside it's a cozy 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Since it set out last summer, Parker has made 3 sweltering passes of the sun, and with many more still to come in the next 5 years. And its findings are already surprising scientists back home. Surprising scientists. Well, what do you know? One of the earliest scientific discoveries about the sun was also the most significant. The Earth was not the center of the universe, but orbited the sun. Wait a minute, what? So what does that have to... Wow. They just had to get that in there, didn't they? They just have to, get the biggest lie ever told almost, probably, in there. In the century since Copernicus redrew the cosmic map, scientists have traveled closer to the heart of the system, first with telescopes. So wait a minute, you can travel with a telescope near to the sun? I didn't know that. Well, what do we need NASA for? We'll just get on our telescope and ride to the sun, boy. And then with satellites and Limobiles. They learned about the nuclear fusion, which is ridiculous, hypothetical nonsense. Nuclear fusion that powers our star and countless others. And with the discovery of exoplanets, realized that many stars could be someone else's sun. Oh, God. And isn't that just the whole point, I believe, or one of the big points of the Globe Earth lie? It's to basically take us out of any position of speciality or any favorable position in the universe and make it appear to, or convince people that basically our sun isn't really special. There's trillions of them. There's quadrillions of planets orbiting all these other suns, making us basically, less important than a single grain of sand on all the beaches in the world. I mean, that is, I believe, one of the biggest motivations or motivating factors for the Globe Earth lie, is to basically belittle us, to take away our heritage, our self-esteem, and put us into the bucket of complete and total insignificance. According to infinite space theory, if the entire solar system were to explode in a ball of fire right this second, the rest of the universe would basically be completely unfazed, and in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't really matter. So, yeah, they just they've got a carbonate or some kind of carbon fiber or whatever shielding that puts the thing in the shade so that it can just get real damn close to the sun without having any problems. I want to say that it gets about 4 million miles from the sun, something like that. But you know, to me, that's just so absurd. But of course, NASA has shielding that can protect itself from temperatures that would basically cause any material that we're familiar with to boil into a gas. Who first described the dynamics of solar wind in 1958? So yeah, this guy came up with a theory of solar wind, and they basically carved it in stone, and now they have to go out and pretend to find verifying evidence of his theory. And of course, these scientists are always right. They do believe this theory until traveled further than any other Limobile detected part. Just lies and more lies and more lies. So we've got Asteroid Bennu. We've got this mission to the sun where they're collecting data about the solar winds, conveniently confirming what this Parker guy thunk. Just as they always do. And we should get a picture of this. Let's do this guy, because he looks shady to me, dude. 1958 Parker Parker Solar Wind. Eugene Parker. Where's the images of this guy? I know they're there. Here he is. Wait, that's not him, is it? There was a better picture. And let's get an image of Eugene Parker. Maybe that is him, but there was one picture of him. I was like, wow, that guy looks like a total douche. Come on, Google, what are you doing? Eugene Parker. Yeah, and I guess he's still living. So this guy comes up with a theory. He looks like a nice guy. There was somebody else. This guy comes up with a theory in the 50s, and NASA sets out just to confirm his theories because, well, they like him, I guess. They just like to confirm what scientists believe in order to, pat themselves on the back and lend credence to their ridiculous theories. All right. So, ow, I got a cramp in my foot. I got to stand up. 1 second. Ooh wee. Don't you hate that? I think I need to eat some bananas or something. My potassium might be low, yo. All right. So let's do. There's even more, guys. Life on Mars. Life on Mars. NASA News. It's a YouTube video by this guy Andreas. What is his name? Andreas something. Maybe I can find it again. And, normally I would have all these little browser windows open so that it would be on the ready. But it just bogs down my RAM. So let's do this as a YouTube search. It's not going to show up this way. Sorry for the load time, guys. Come on. Where's my guy? I guess I'll have to go in my history because it just isn't. It isn't showing it. Let's look at the history here. Here he is. Nope, that's him, but that's not the video. Hold on. Where are you, Anton? I guess I'll have to go to his channel. I guess I will. come on. Alright, so we'll just go to this dude's channel and we'll try to find the video that I'm looking for here. And, you know, we could talk about this one too, but I really did want to talk about this alleged life on Mars nonsense. Anton Petrov, that's his name. I think it was from a week or two ago. Yeah, here it is. He's not saying it's aliens, but it's unusual oxygen emissions. Blah, 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 blah. So let's do that. Here it is.
Most name brand bars and body
come
washes
on.
you rub on your skin are classified by the FDA as synthetic detergent.
Yeah. Alright, we'll start this over here.
Listen, this is Anton, and welcome to Mars. In this video, we're going to be talking about a very recently released study directly from NASA that suggests, well, actually, another unexplained mystery coming from Mars. And this time, even more science suggesting that there might be life. I'm not going to say for certain that there is life, but the chances have now increased dramatically.
I mean, how can you say anything?
Let's talk about this.
How can you say anything for certain about space? I mean, Anton, I don't think you've ever been to space. Don't think you're ever going. If such a thing were possible, you wouldn't be going to Mars anytime soon. So yeah, let's not say anything for certain about space other than it's fake.
Welcome to What the Math. In the last few years, NASA has very thoroughly studied the composition, the atmosphere, and a lot of other things on the planet Mars, and has discovered quite a lot of things that were unfortunately, or I guess in some sense fortunately, unexplainable. And one of those things I've actually talked about in one of the previous videos from last year, methane. We've discovered unusual emissions of methane that could not really be easily explained. And as you know, on Earth, methane kind of correlates with life. A lot of methane is produced by life, but not always. Some methane is what's known as abiotic and can be produced by various chemical reactions in the soil. And for the first time ever, we've also been able to very thoroughly analyze and study the composition of air inside the Gale crater that you see on the screen right here. And it's also the location of the Curiosity rover that's still active on Mars and is basically actively working for us, detecting all sorts of data and allows us to study the atmosphere of Mars with a lot of precision.
Okay, so let's talk about that in a minute. The Curiosity rover is supposedly still on Mars, doing its thing, collecting samples, and you know they did a really brilliant documentary on one of the Discovery or Nat Geo channels or whatever a few years ago, where it shows in very high definition these Curiosity rovers doing their thing, and you get beautiful shots of Mars. However, what you'll realize once you get about 10 minutes into the thing is that it is all 100% CGI. NASA doesn't even claim that it's real images. They claim that it is CGI. And so my big question would be, if you have a rover on Mars with cameras and the ability to send, telemetric data or, phone home with data and video, why would you then need to fake the video, or what? Did they forget to put cameras on it? That doesn't make any sense. Everything NASA does is just so completely deceptive, and, the Mars rovers are no exception. So let's continue and get to the meat of this point.
So in the last 6 Earth years, or about 3 Mars years, we were able to use the beautiful...
Yeah, can we just use Earth years? I don't think it's necessary to use Mars years to it. Just saying.
...rover to find out quite a lot of things about the Martian atmosphere. Like, for example, this is how we discovered that the surface of Mars and the Martian atmosphere is actively regulated by the CO2 atmosphere. In this case, the rover discovered that when the winter comes and when Martian surface becomes a little bit colder than usual, the CO2 gas actually gets deposited into ice directly. In other words, it goes from the gas form into the ice form. This is known as deposition. And when it becomes ice, a lot of the pressure on Mars, the air pressure, gets much, much lower than before. And because of this, other gases like methane and even oxygen actually go away as well. They either...
And I just want to point something out. I mean, look, this is a pretty complicated thing he's talking about. I mean, you really have to study the crap out of Mars to realize, the pressure thing, water freezes, so the barometric pressure goes down, and then other reactions are allowed to happen because of that decreased barometric pressure. I mean, this is a very, very complex sort of system that they're describing here. So, I just want to point out that what a grandiose, complex lie that they're telling. I mean, they have got it down to, well, a science, right? I mean, and who would ever think in a million years that they would be lying to this extent about these things? But they really do. They really do just get into it, and they've got all this clearly simulated data for people to pour through and interpret and be shocked and awed by. But man, just 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 oozing with deception and lies. I'm telling you, man.
Get deposited or disappear for some other reasons. We're not entirely sure why just yet. Then, when the summer comes, the Martian surface warms up, the ice gets sublimated or basically becomes gas again, and the released CO2 increases the air pressure, thus allowing other gases to coexist as well. And this is exactly what NASA has detected over the past 6 years. Inside the Gale crater, they've detected these changes that happen very regularly every 2 years, which is the equivalent of a Martian year. So in this image right here, you can kind of see that there's very obvious variations inside the Gale crater, and this is with oxygen and methane. So every summer there is a lot more oxygen and a lot more methane, and this correlates with the amount of CO2, and every winter it kind of drops. But
that is probably the ugliest chart I've ever seen in my life. I mean, good God.
this is where the mystery begins. When the scientists measured the actual values for oxygen and methane and compared them to the models that we had, basically models predicting how much of methane and oxygen there should be, they realized something was off. In the summer, there was a lot more oxygen than we predicted.
Oh, wow. So you mean NASA was wrong in one of their hypotheses? I guess they have to do that sometime. They can't be correct all the time, right?
In the winter, the oxygen values dropped beyond the predicted values. So the actual oxygen levels were a lot more unpredictable and a lot more varied than we expected them to be. And in the last few months, what the scientists behind this particular discovery did is, first of all, go through all of the detection techniques. They double and triple checked every single apparatus, including this one right here. That's the one responsible.
Okay, I just love that. He does this all the time. But he's pointing out this little contraption here has a specific purpose. It's called SAM. That's my guy made that acronym, I'm sure. But, okay, surely you know that this is CGI. You're not pointing to anything but a cartoon. Yeah, so like what you see, this little contraption here is also a cartoon. Just saying.
For the gas detection. They also double and triple checked all of their data and all of their calculations.
Double and triple check, guys. It must be true.
They also looked at some other models and other theoretical predictions, but just as we have it right now, there is absolutely no explanation, no physical chemical explanation to what could cause these unusual observations. Basically, the oxygen levels that we saw going too high and too low are currently kind of unexplainable. Like, for example, they mentioned that for the oxygen levels that they observed to naturally disappear and to become that low, it would actually take at least 10 years. And if all of this oxygen, extra oxygen, came from, for example, water molecules that were broken up by the sun, this was actually the first explanation they had, it would take 5 times more water than currently is on Mars for this to actually happen. So the existence of this oxygen and its ability to go to such high levels is very difficult to explain knowing what we know about Mars right now, and also knowing what we know about the composition of Gale crater. And since the amount of oxygen increased by up to about 30% from the predicted value, this is where NASA kind of started scratching its head, and they even asked for help from, well, really anyone, the public, anyone with chemical knowledge and understanding of what could cause this, because the only other explanation is, of course, is that it's life causing it.
So that's kind of where they're going with this. That's the point I wanted to cover on this one, is that, yeah, they're planting sort of subliminal seeds in the public's heads that, yeah, there may be some sort of a life on Mars. Um, and remember, we spoke about it a couple weeks ago that the Mars One mission, the private thing where people were basically buying crap from Mars One in order to get points on their account so that they would be in the top 100 people's list to go to Mars. Yeah, Mars One went out of business. Belly up, filed bankruptcy. Not going to happen. However, yeah, you won't really see much of that on the news and stuff because they love to, convince people that they can go to Mars and that we're all gonna go to Mars one day, and you got to buy a bunch of stuff from Mars One in order to get on the short list. But yeah, in terms of letting everyone know that the company's belly up, you might find a 30-second news snippet or maybe a small article in some obscure newspaper telling you the truth that the Mars One thing is kaput and they're filed bankruptcy. So yeah, just more nonsense, man. I mean, more nonsense, planting the seeds of ancient alienism, if you will, transpermia into people's heads, when in fact there is no possible way that anything could live on a light in the sky, right? I mean, we know that. But you got intelligent people with seem to have good hearts, decent people, just completely deceived about this sort of thing, regurgitating what NASA says, and yeah, just absolutely crazy. So we've got another one to talk about here. This is the Indian, or the not Indian feathers, but Indian dots space program, Chandraayan 2, which crashed into the moon fairly recently. Let's find this one. Alright, so let's watch this little video, clip it, and we'll talk about it. Gotta see them ads.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, and as the holiday chaos kicks in, know that we're here for any sales or service needs.
So this confirms
US Space Agency, which has now said that its satellite orbiting the moon has found debris of Chandraayan 2's lander Vikram on the lunar surface. The lander had lost contact, remember, shortly before the scheduled attempt to soft land on the moon on September 7th. But NASA posted pictures talking about their own orbiter that has now shown the impact and the site where they say some debris has been found as well. Now, they tweeted also saying that Vikram lander has been found by our NASA moon mission, and they went on to show a before and after picture of its very...
Okay, I love this before and after picture. Try to find the differences, right? Where are we at here? So they circle it here, before and after, but where is that circled area in the before? So looking for, like, basically this triangle. So I don't... Okay, so wait a minute. This right here is that. Okay, so just to give you the frame of reference, 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 little craters, or whatever you want to call them, in a row, that corresponds with that right there. And look and try to find the differences. NASA is claiming that this proves that the Indian probe Chandraayan 2 crashed in little bits and pieces onto the moon. But yeah, not really seeing too much difference other than, the light angle is a little bit slightly different. But yeah, come on, guys, think about it. Could these images be faked ever? Is it possible? No, NASA would never fake an image. And of course, yeah, they found the debris by looking at this. So let's continue.
Critical how it looks like. You can hardly make a difference over there, but we'll talk about that in a bit of more detail to tell you how exactly it is. In fact, there is one more image. The US Space Agency has also posted, like I said, highlighting the changes to the surface and the impact point. Now look at this image on your screen right now, and if you go full screen on that, you'll be able to see 2 different colors. It talks about a green and the blue. Now, what we are made to understand is that the green dots indicate the spacecraft debris, confirmed or likely, they're still looking into it, and the blue dots are an indicator of the disturbed soil likely where small bits of spacecraft churned up the area as well, thus indicating that this is the place where it could have actually happened. Now, if this all happened, remember, in the background of days after the attempt to land the lunar surface, ISRO had confirmed that they had lost all communications with the orbiter, and later NASA had said that Chandraayan-2 landed with a hard landing and had released pictures of the targeted land site as well. The lunar lander Vikram, one of the three components of Chandraayan-2 spacecraft, it stopped transmitting signals just about 2 kilometers from the surface, and then Vikram and the lunar rover Pragyan, which is housed inside the lander, were scheduled to operate for a lunar day, that is equal to 14 Earth days, and carry out series of surface and subsurface experiments which could not be done. The lunar orbiter, which is still in the orbit around the moon, is expected to be operational for 7 years and help in understanding of the moon's evolution, mapping, and its minerals and water molecules in the polar regions.
And yeah, these CGI animations definitely prove that India sent their little Lie-mobile to the moon and it unfortunately crashed. Yeah, these CGI images and animations are proof of absolutely nothing other than the space agencies of the world's ability and propensity to lie and create really, quite unbelievable graphics of their scenarios that they make up. Excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, it's just fake space news has always got something going on. Of course, space is a fairly boring place, and so they have to keep it spicy. They got to keep the drama going, and yeah, it's so hard to be NASA. The Indian Space Agency can't do it. I mean, remember, on 1960s and 70s technology, the NASA astronauts physically went to the moon and hopped out of their little Lie-mobile and walked around on the moon on their first try and on their every single try. Never even had any sort of problems except for one on the way back, allegedly. But, India, with the technological advancements since the 60s and 70s, is incapable of even landing a single little probe onto the moon without blowing it up in the process. And so it makes you wonder, if such a thing is possible this day and age with today's technology and all of the knowledge that the space agencies have accumulated over the decades, India can't get it right, even without people on it. So why would NASA have live streamed basically to the entire world the Apollo landing when anything could have gone wrong? I mean, could you imagine if they would have put out the hype and the press exposure to the first Apollo moon landing, really? And then something would have occurred, like it blew up and scattered to 1,000 pieces all over the surface of the moon. Wouldn't that have been a bit of an embarrassment to NASA and really the American people? So it begs the question, did they know ahead of time going in that there was no sort of a potential problem because they weren't actually going there? They were just filming it on a soundstage? I would say yes. And, there's just all sorts of problems like that with the Apollo missions that it just seems a little bit too good to be true. And, usually when things seem too good to be true, that is usually the case, right? I mean, that's the way things go. So yeah, the Indian Chandraayan-2 debris was recently found by NASA, allegedly, and we get these little quite unremarkable pictures as proof or evidence of it. And of course, people just believe it because that's what we're supposed to do. We're just supposed to believe everything NASA claims, don't ever question it. And yeah, that can't set us up for any sort of problems ever, right? Because, science is the practice of just unquestioningly believing that everything that an entity says or claims, right? No, I'm sorry. That is quite the opposite of science, I would say. Right. And so let's move on to the Lawrence Krauss thing, because I don't know if you guys had heard about this, but Lawrence Krauss, and let's pull up an image of him, everybody's favorite atheist and astrophysicist. And was it the University of, where was he at? Oh, it's with a K, isn't it? Yeah, he was forced to retire from his position the end of last year, 2018, for, let's just say, being a bit rapey and gropey and certainly unprofessional. right? Not just at the school he worked at, but also at conferences that he was keynote speaker at. He was, borderline rapey and certainly gropey and inappropriate. But yeah, so let's see. Yeah, Arizona State University. So was that the one that we talked about in the beginning? I don't even remember. It's whatever. Doesn't matter. So let's see here. And let's not forget, there is a connection between him and Epstein as well. Epstein in the early 2000s, I believe, a couple times, but in one particular donation, Jeffrey Epstein sent $250,000 to Lawrence Krauss at the Arizona State University for his program. And Lawrence Krauss also rode aboard the Lolita Express, I believe, to the Virgin Islands on Epstein's plane to the Virgin Islands for some conference. And so, usually when there's smoke, there's fire. When you have multiple women coming forward and saying that this everyone's favorite astrophysicist atheist is certainly gropey and borderline rapey, it raises a couple flags. And then when you realize the connections between he and Epstein, him riding aboard Rape Express to the Virgin Islands for some conference, it does raise some red flags. So we'll read this article, 3 revelations from the Lawrence Krauss sexual harassment report. Disturbing details emerged this week about the behavior of a prominent professor of the theoretical physics at Arizona State University who announced on Sunday that he has agreed to retire at the end of the academic year. I mean, really, let's just think about this for a minute. Let's say you worked at Taco Bell or McDonald's, whatever. And you have coworkers and customers complaining that, let's say, for example, he stuck his hand up her dress, because that actually did happen at one of these conferences that Lawrence Krauss was speaking at. Stuck his hand up her dress and was very gropey with a woman, say it's a customer or say it's a coworker. Do you really think that they would let you finish out the year at Taco Bell before you retired? Or would they just fire your ass on the spot without any investigation, whether you actually did it or not? Just the simple allegations of this sort would typically, in most normal circumstances, cause one to lose their job. But not Lawrence Krauss. He's going to get his pension. He actually got to finish the academic year. And, what's up with these double standards when it comes to borderline rapey and gropey people that are connected with Epstein, right? He didn't see the inside of a cell, and there was more than one woman. I think there was 3 or maybe 4 different women who came forward. And, here's the thing, guys. If 3 or maybe 4, whatever, even if it's just 2, if 2 different women are coming forward with these allegations, the odds that they are both or all 3 of them or whatever are lying about it is pretty small. Usually when women come forward with this sort of thing, they're not just making it up. And so the other thing would be, statistically, if 3 or whatever are coming forward, how many others are out there that are not going to come forward for the fear of embarrassment or backlash or whatever? So to me, it appears that there is something of this. And of course, he didn't fight it. He didn't contest any of it. He just quietly retired at the end of the year with a severance package. And by the way, while the investigation was going on, he got a couple of weeks off with pay or whatever. Maybe it was more than a couple of weeks, but he was getting paid. Okay, so Lawrence Krauss is not having to worry about any of the normal things that everyday people would have to worry about if they were borderline rapey and gropey. So Lawrence Krauss, who teaches at the University School of Earth and Fake Space Exploration, was placed on paid leave in March and banned from the campus. Oh, so really? So he got a free vacation? Oh, please, don't throw me in the briar patch, right? Don't throw me in the Amazon prison, right, Lawrence? He was placed on paid leave in March and banned from the campus after a BuzzFeed News investigation uncovered evidence that he had groped and made sexually charged remarks to women over a period of about a decade. And let's not forget the connection between him and Epstein, which is certainly also there. Documents obtained and published by BuzzFeed News on Monday described a slew of reported incidents, including one which Krauss suggested that a job prospect engage in a threesome, and in another he told a female employee she should take one for the team and date a donor. I mean, really, could you imagine? I mean, let alone in a respectable field where you're a professor and you have some sort of authority or potential control over people, or even something simple as like you're a manager at a pizza place or whatever. I mean, could you imagine suggesting that somebody that comes in for an interview engage in a threesome? I mean, dude, you would lose your job in a New York minute just for the allegation. Whether or not it's true, they're not gonna give you paid leave, dude. Not gonna happen unless you're Lawrence Krauss. In another, he told a female employee she should take one for the team and date a donor. I mean, dude, wow, man. I mean, this guy has some definite creepy ways about him. And, maybe you could say that he's socially inept or he's poor at flirting, but clearly, Lawrence Krauss grew up on planet Earth, and he knows that you're not really supposed to talk about that sort of thing in a professional setting, certainly not in a université setting. Wow, dude. And again, and I think that maybe some more digging is needed here, but you do have this connection between him and Epstein. I mean, Epstein gave the dude $250,000, and he didn't even get to spend it all before he was quietly retired. He says in his public statement on Sunday, Krauss denied harassing or assaulting anyone, but said he had agreed to retire in May when he turned 65. Well, isn't that convenient, Krauss? And he said, onward and hopefully upward to new and different challenges. What? So you're gonna try to get into girls' pants in some other respect? I mean, what are the challenges we're talking about here, Lawrence? He complained that the review process had not allowed him to complete access to the evidence and the accusations against him, and that he had been unable to cross-examine witnesses or be represented by a lawyer. Really, so the guy that these multiple women are coming forward with complaints about, he wanted to be able to cross-examine them. Like, wow, dude, like the audacity of this guy. And yes, I understand you should be able to know and face your accusers in a court of law, but that's legalese stuff, dude. When it comes to a private university like that, you don't have those sort of rights. I mean, again, put yourself in any sort of other situation where you have these allegations by multiple women hurled against you. Unless they're taking you to court, you don't have those sort of rights to cross-examine them and have a lawyer. And so instead of fighting it, let's see what he says. He says he was confident that he would have been exonerated had he appealed his case, but that even so, the working environment would no longer be conducive to continuing my active teaching, research, groping, rapey attitude, and service activities. No, he didn't say the groping and rapey attitude parts, but yeah. So basically, he just didn't even try to fight the good fight, didn't even give it the old college try. He just basically laid down and got, basically a golden parachute, right? No sort of legal ramifications, no sort of anything but a bit of, he had to eat a bit of crow. But other than that, man, it's everything's just fine and dandy. Didn't even bother to fight it. So, like, honestly, dude, could you imagine if you were actually innocent of these sorts of things, and you had people accusing you of these sorts of things, and your job was on the line, and your reputation's at stake? Wouldn't you fight that tooth and nail to prove your innocence? Wouldn't you? No, he just laid down and took it, and took the severance package, took the retirement, and to me that speaks volumes. And of course his excuse was that it just wouldn't have been the same had he have fought it. He could have kept his job, he could have kept on working at the Arizona State University or whatever, but he decided not to. Now, he has explained some of his behaviors as harmless joking. Really? A job? You're interviewing someone for a job position and you suggest they do a threesome? That is harmless joking? No, dude. That is absolutely sexual harassment. Absolutely. Not even a question. Okay? So he doesn't even deny that. He says he was just joking. Really? Okay, so put yourself in her position, Lawrence. You're going to a job interview, and let's say it's a guy that's doing the interview, and he basically suggested you do a threesome. Would you think that's funny? Especially, whatever, dude. I mean, this to me says all that you need to know about where he's coming from, dude. To me, that is sort of the smoking gun that, first of all, he doesn't even try to fight the allegations. He just quietly retires, gets his free vacation. But yeah, no, it's just a harmless joke. Doesn't even deny it. Doesn't even deny it. So really, do you think that would stand up in a court of law? So, Mr. Krauss, you're hereby accused of sexual innuendos to this interviewee, which is certainly unethical, borderline illegal, and his defense is, well, Your Honor, it was just harmless joking. Well, I don't think that the woman he was talking to thought that was harmless joking because, well, she went and made a stink about it. And the university administration agrees with me on this, not with Lawrence. They disagreed that it was harmless joking. The provost, Mark Searle, wrote in a July 31st letter to Krauss that his behavior was, quote, unprofessional, reflects a failure of leadership, and is extremely disappointing, end quote. And I would add borderline rapey and certainly just disgusting for someone in his position to even if he thought it was harmless joking, to even have those words come out of his mouth in an interview, right? The professor's behavior was found to have violated the university's anti-harassment policy and its code of ethics, and yet he still gets his free vacation, still gets his retirement. I mean, really? Really? Huh. Here's 3 patterns of behavior that emerged in the investigation. Krauss was prone to making sexist comments, later saying he was joking. Okay, so basically, Louis C.K., whom I respect far more highly than somebody like Krauss, first of all, admitted what he did, and basically very similar things. I mean, yeah, okay, so Louis C.K. was a little bit worse in terms of what he was allegedly doing than Krauss, but, Louis C.K., was basically stricken from Netflix. All of his shows were canceled, and he didn't get any free vacation or severance package or anything like that. So there's a very blatant double standard at stake here, at play here. It says at one point, Krauss suggested to a woman who was interested in working with the Origins Project, a research effort that he founded and directed at Arizona State, that she engaged with him in a threesome. Krauss admitted that he'd made the suggestion, but he was kidding. So he even admits it, dude. So really, Lawrence Krauss, do you really think that you would have been exonerated if you had fought this? When you're admitting that you did the thing that she said that you did? Dude, I mean, come on, bro. The woman who later took a job with Arizona State told her supervisor about the conversation, saying she was aghast, that it was weird, said no, and that was that. Yeah. He also admitted that in 2012 he told a female employee she should take one for the team and date a donor who found her attractive. She said she didn't remember Krauss saying that, but another staff member told investigators that she was offended by the comment. Oh my gosh. So here's another pattern that emerged. Sometimes Krauss's behavior crossed the line into groping, which, okay, saying words is one thing, sure, that can still be considered sexual harassment. I mean, I just have never been in a position where I can relate to that. I go to a job interview and I expect that person to rate me based on my merits, my qualities, right, my resume, but certainly not to bring up sex into the conversation ever. I mean, dude, that would make anyone feel uncomfortable, and if he doesn't understand that, then there's something wrong with this guy. I mean, really, there's got to be. And he kind of looks creepy too, doesn't he? So he says in 2016, and actually you can find this woman, she's actually very funny, but it wasn't a laughing matter. You can find her on YouTube. She talks all about it. She tells you exactly what happened. Oh, wait, this is the breast of a woman, so I didn't even know about this. This must be indeed a 4th one. The one that I saw on YouTube, he basically put his hand up her skirt in the line at a bar at a convention that they were both speaking at. He was like a keynote speaker. She was a panelist. And but anyway, so this is another one. Grabbed the breast of a woman who asked to take a selfie with him during a reception at a convention in Australia where he'd been invited to speak. The investigatory report said. When the woman objected, she said he responded by telling her not to post the photo on Facebook. So, somebody that, if this is true, if she's telling the truth, and I don't have any reason to doubt it, and if the other one, when you go beyond talking words and start getting into like touching people that have not asked for it and groping and, touching private parts of women, dude, I mean, where I come from, that might get your ass whooped, but, it is a reflection on the person. And so when you learn about the connection between him and Epstein, which is there, I mean, there's definitely a connection for sure. It makes you wonder, man, because somebody that just feels they have the right to speak with women like that, talk to women like that, grope them without being invited, yeah, that is a bit of a red flag. So the photo reportedly shows Krauss with his hand raised, about to grope her, according to the woman and witnesses. So it's not just her saying it. There's more than one person saying it. Krauss said that he'd never grabbed her and that he might have been raising his hand to steady the woman or shield his eyes from the camera's anticipated flash. In 2011, he intentionally touched the thigh of a woman attending an academic conference. The report said she posted a description of the incident on YouTube. This is the one that you can watch, and it is very creepy the way that she said it happened. And I have absolutely no reason to doubt her. I believe that she's 100% telling the truth. She said that as she waited in line with Krauss to get a drink, he reaches down and grabs the bottom of her mini dress, which, by the way, was short. And the way she described it is he basically stuck his hand up her dress with the back of his hand touching her thigh and commented on it, and then removed his hand from her dress and sort of caressed her thigh, all just completely on his own volition without any sort of invitation. And she was really pissed about it. She didn't do anything at the time, but you can tell when she's talking about it. And again, this was 8 years ago. It really creeped her out, dude. The black dress had a pattern that included a depiction of galaxies. The woman said that Krauss put his palm on her upper thigh. When he saw her angry post on YouTube, he sent her a written response saying, was it an apology? Or was it, he said, he had inadvertently touched her while pointing to a galaxy on her dress? And, he was sorry. But according to her, it was completely intentional. There was no unintentionalness about it, dude. Some of his behavior simply struck colleagues as creepy. Ding, 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 ding. In 2016, he drew and showed staff members a cartoon of a person bent over with pants pulled down, revealing their bare butt. He discussed strip clubs with his employees and encouraged them to view fan mail he had received, some of which included nude photos and fans propositioning him. So, I mean, dude, clearly this guy is a total creep. And the fact that he's riding aboard Rape Express, the Lolita Express, and he's pretty chummy with Epstein is not looking good for him. And, again, when there's smoke, there's usually fire. He and an unnamed staff person hugged, touched, and kissed each other in the presence of coworkers who had the impression that they were intimately involved. He and the staff member said it was just their way of greeting each other. So, and, there's some other allegations, too, about Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think less substantial, or at least less substantiated than these about Krauss. But, dude, I'm sorry. I hate to judge a book by its cover, but this guy just looks like a total creeper to me. And when you realize, his mind's in the gutter, he's gropey, friends with Epstein. Epstein sent him $250,000, I think, about 10 years ago. Flew aboard his private jet to the Virgin Islands. I mean, yeah, dude. So, yeah, he quietly retired. He's still certainly worshipped by the atheists. However, I think that this one here is very creepy, and I believe there is something to it. So let's check in on the chat, guys. Hopefully you guys, wow, the stream status is good. That is a big surprise. So, been going about an hour and a half. Okay, Nicholas Brown, the carbonaceous rock, it was a slightly higher density than ice. And I guess, maybe it is about the same as water. So, you would expect, you would expect to see gravitational fields from all large objects in nature if something the size of this alleged asteroid was generating a gravity field. Do you think Krauss knows the truth about the shape of the Earth and in on it? Honestly, man, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really don't think so, because we were all there once, man. We were all globetards at one point, and pretty much 100%, maybe 99.9% of the time, when we are first introduced to the topic of flat Earth, we poo-poo it, we disregard it without investigation, just completely reject it. And I don't think much is different for especially the professors of this world. So yeah, no, I don't necessarily think that he's in on it. I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. It isn't really necessary. Now, truthfully, the only people that is necessary for them to be in on it is definitely the astronauts, because they are literally lying about being in space. But and maybe a couple of administrators at NASA, but not even necessarily them. I think that this is such a closely guarded sort of conspiracy, if you will, that most people are completely unawares. And it is just so absurd and out of the realm of possibility to most people, that the Earth might actually be flat and stationary. That no, I don't think so. Even Neil deGrasse, I just don't think that that they're necessarily on purpose telling lies. I think they believe what they're saying. I think it's been drummed into their heads since they were just little kids, just as everybody else. And yeah, it's really hard to prove what people believe as well. I mean, because people can lie, people can cheat, people can steal, but when it comes to proving what they believe, that's very difficult. It really is. Um, so, like, for example, in a court of law, you had like the big tobacco guys getting sued, and they all go on record in front of a court, in front of a judge, saying the same thing. They say, "I don't believe that nicotine is addictive." Okay, and prove it. Prove that they believe otherwise. Yet you never will in a million years. And really, that's all that's needed by the letter of the law, is for them to say what they don't believe that nicotine is addictive, because if they knowingly sold addictive chemicals to people, that would make them liable. But if they claim they don't believe that it's addictive,